If you find this recording, don't feel bad about this. Part of the journey is the end.
Howdy y'all, Andy here and welcome to King's Comics. It's funny because I had a friend call me out over the weekend because I have completely forgotten to record my Endgame spoiler review. So we're going to knock that out right now. And as of my talking right now, it turns out that they're coming out with Endgame, I guess a extended release version of Endgame next week with new footage. Man, Marvel's really trying to make more than Avatar. That being said, let's just go ahead and cut into my spoiler review. It's been a long time coming, so what did I think? I've seen the movie 5 times as of me recording this, and I've immensely enjoyed it each time. I mean, I've just this movie's gotten glowing praise from me. I really enjoyed it. I will reveal what my kind of ranking is of that movie in my MCU ranking, so check that out. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it start to finish. Don't get me wrong, I think it lagged in a couple spots, especially when Tony and Pepper were talking, but either way. Once again, spoiler warning is in full effect. So let's kind of start at the beginning. I was really impressed because in the trailer, I totally assumed that seeing Tony on the ship was kind of an Endgame. Gosh, I gotta be careful with that. But kind of an Endgame, like mission and end run where he was going to fight Thanos on his own. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't even consider that it might be the beginning of the movie with him trying to escape Titan and go back to Earth with Nebula. So that was awesome. He was using the Guardians of the Galaxy ship. That makes a lot more sense. And then Captain Marvel saved him, so that was a great way to work Captain Marvel into things. I'll give some more thoughts on her kind of role in the movie as we truck along. But them coming back home, just the kind of emotion, the emotionality of the scene, just him and Steve reconnecting with one another and just his rage, his sense of loss. I mean, and clearly, he was malnourished and dehydrated, so, man, it just felt so visceral. And then we cut into the Avengers mounting up and going to fight Thanos, and then we realized that Thanos had already destroyed the stones. I thought that Thanos destroying the stones, using the stones to destroy the stones, was an incredibly just a way to kind of take his villainy to the next level. It's kind of like Ozymandias in Watchmen, right? He already set the plan in motion before he told the heroes what was going to happen. Well, the only way that the Avengers even knew how to find him was because he had already destroyed the stones. And it kind of seals the deal on Thanos truly believing what he's doing is the right course. Of course, Thor lobs his head off. That was awesome. Which skips ahead. Fat Thor means everything to me. Actually, my buddy Riley said that, and I'm totally stealing it from him. But Fat Thor was awesome. More on that as we truck along. The 5-year time gap was something that I knew about ahead of time because there had been some leaked footage from one of the Comic-Cons or something like that. So that was something I'd heard about. I know they were going to keep that. But seeing the time skip was great. I think it just kind of sealed the deal on the whole, this is final. Like, people have to move on. And what Thanos did, unless they figure out some way to reverse this, is... well, it's set in stone. 6 stones. Hashtag stones out for Thanos. Either way, just seeing Steve try to help people reconcile the fact, their sense of loss, especially coming from his background of being frozen after World War II, or during World War II, really, was also beautiful because we do see him get to move on, and he does find a way to still be a hero or to, quote-unquote, save people. We also see that not Scarlet Witch, she was dusted, but we see that Black Widow was also suffering immense weight because she had no family prior to this, and I like that they bring that into the fray, as well as her acting as kind of the central agent. I honestly felt like, I don't know, that was a little weird to me. I think that they could have done that a lot better, but yeah, I did like that they still try to maintain the Avengers themes and that they tied in the cosmic level Avengers, as well as gave Rocket his old classic costume back. That was dope. But I like that they tied in the fact that the Avengers were still there and they were doing patrols and that evil was still out in the world. Especially when you bring Ronin into the fray. Man, I wish we got to see more of Hawkeye as Ronin in action. Maybe we'll get to see that in the re-release next week. But yeah, I thought getting to see Hawkeye shine in this as this kind of vigilante figure, and then he even gets to use his sword when he's taking out the Outrunners during the just the last act of the movie. It was great. But yeah, seeing Black Widow and then her and Steve kind of having to talk about the finality of this, and then we go over to Scott Lang coming back from the quantum realm. I like how they tied that into, well, also let's kind of focus on the fact that a rat is the reason this whole movie, even with all these pieces fell in place, right? The fact that a rat managed to turn on the I don't know, quantum recall thing, whatever you want to call it, means that that rat saved the Marvel Universe, the MCU. So just let that, just meditate on that. But yeah, then we see Scott Lang. We get to see Cassidy Lang. Cassie has grown up 5 years in the future, so that's cool because it kind of plays into my theory of legacy heroes, right? Cassidy Lang becomes stature in the comics, and she's she's a young Avenger who has the ability to change her size, similar to her dad, similar to Ant-Man. So hopefully we get to see that come into play. I think if Marvel leverages legacy heroes of that nature, new Avengers, young Avengers, whatever you want to call them, they have the ability to just keep this thing going. Especially since we now know that the multiverse may or may not be a thing, coming from the Far From Home trailer and the introduction of Mysterio. But moving on, I thought that was great, and the fact that he went and kind of pulled off this, put together this whole time heist thing was awesome. Also, fast forwarding and seeing Tony has learned to move on. He's had a daughter, him and Pepper are together. I thought this was great, especially because, I've already said spoiler alert, because he dies at the end, I thought it was good that he had at least got that little bit of happiness. He finally got to marry Pepper. He had a kid. He had at least some semblance of happiness, which also plays into Steve's ending as well. But yeah, I mean, he was very set in stone, but it was clear that he still felt the weight of Peter's loss as well as all those who had passed away or who had gotten dusted. But I gotta admit, I loved Professor Hulk. I loved him coming into the fray, but I wish we got to see. I wish, if we were going to talk about a process I wish we got to see, that would have been one of them, is seeing his kind of transformation into the Hulk. And technically, if Bruce became Professor Hulk, does that mean that the Hulk personality is gone? Does that mean like he wiped out that part of himself? Because he fused the brain and the brawn, like he said, but the Hulk still had a personality and kind of matured during his time on Sakaar, right? I mean, so did he just... So I feel like we might be dancing around the fact that he might have technically killed the Hulk or that part of his personality, but I don't know, maybe we see how that comes into play in the next phase of the Marvel movies. But yeah, I thought Mark Ruffalo was funny in this. I really enjoyed the comedy he had. I enjoyed the whole bit with Ant-Man. That was really good, as well as them bringing him into just planning the time heist. But I feel like they really underplayed his intelligence as compared to Tony, which... I don't know, of course Tony's the guy who's got to save the Marvel Universe. I mean, I thought that needed to happen, but at the same time, I feel like they really, I don't know, it felt like they downplayed his intelligence compared to Tony's, which I think Bruce Banner is, I mean, he's clearly one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel Universe, but still, moving on. I'm definitely glad we got to see Steve and Tony make amends. I mean, I feel like there could have been a little bit more discourse between them talking about everything that happened, but I think we got enough. I think we had enough scenes in there to kind of dictate that, yeah, we knew for a fact they had buried the hatchet. So that was good before they went into the final battle and before they went back in time with one another. Especially since we got to see them trust in one another as they went back all the way to, 1940s, 1960s? Either way, when Tony Stark was born. That way, I guess 1970s actually. Either way, we got to see them go back in the past and have to put trust in each other and seek closure for all the things in the past, right? Steve realizing what he truly wanted after all of this kind of suffering and all these sacrifices he had made, and Tony getting the conversation with his father he never got to have and getting to also reconcile that part. Especially since he dies later, I thought that was a great way to send him off, resolving one of his biggest, kind of his biggest character subplots was his relationship with his dad, or character nuances. So that was a great way to use that. Also, a lot of people were wondering how the whole time loops happen and everything. I think all these different time loops or timelines, whatever you want to call it, they play into how they were discussing with the Infinity Stones, how the removal of them, extraction of them, changes timelines. Especially since we have like Gamora just out there in the main MCU, so there's a bunch of different timeline weirdness going on. I don't think they closed off all those different time streams, but I think that was also an intentional choice, which is why my understanding is that a lot of those new Marvel streaming series that are coming out are going to deal with alternate timelines or something like that. The Loki miniseries, for instance, might deal with his timeline where he steals the Tesseract, right? Because that dude's just out there somewhere with the Tesseract. So, I know, more to come on that. We'll figure that out as we go. Actually, speaking of which miniseries and all that, we got a Wanda and Vision miniseries coming out, and they really didn't deal with where the heck the Vision was at. I mean, I believe he's still in there, right, in the MCU, because they pretty much made a full backup of him in Wakanda, or at least like a kind of almost complete, somewhat partial, somewhat complete backup of him. Right, so my theory there is the fact that the Vision's out there, but they should have brought him. I think they should have brought him into the fray. I just don't know that there was necessarily going to be a clean way to do it. I mean, we might have just gotten kind of a Age of Ultron Part 2, right, where it was just kind of felt rushed and a little messy. So maybe it was for the best that they left Vision out of this. But yeah, I think he's out there. He's going to make a return. We all know it. So then seeing all the Avengers assemble for this end mission, this kind of suicide mission of sorts, where they had to get everything together. They had to get all their ducks in a row. They had to make sure they knew the cost and the consequences. They did a great job of making sure that it felt like, oh yeah, there's a weight here. They're like, they've got to make sure that all these people come back, and they've got to assemble 6 different stones. Especially when you consider they had no idea how the Soul Stone was going to work out. So the whole, everything that played out with Scarlet Widow, with Black Widow and Ronin, aka Hawkeye, was, I mean, I felt the weight of that. A lot of people kind of downplay the sacrifice of Black Widow, and yeah, I feel like maybe it could have had a little bit more weight somehow, but I know, we've got a Black Widow solo movie coming out, right? And it's miniseries, one or the other or both. So yeah, I think that will definitely be a great way to either, I know, like flesh out the character a little bit more, or, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like. All that to say, yeah, I think they did a great job of truly making it a toss-up between whether like Hawkeye or Black Widow died, and I personally felt the weight of both of those. I thought it was a great way to do it, as well as just make sure that there was an intrinsic cost besides Tony dying, right, and besides Steve departing from the role of Captain America. I mean, we in essence lost, I guess we lost 3 OG Avengers in this movie, so that was a pretty big toll. Then we go into the struggle for the Power Stone, right? I mean, the fact that they do everything right for the most part, and then Thanos kind of makes the connection that there are 2 nebulas in this timeline now out of all of a sudden. So this whole quantum entanglement thing was a cool way to work in how Thanos even picked up on the fact that the Avengers were in this timeline, this I know, we're back in time alongside him, so that was also a cool concept, right? Was the fact that it didn't matter what time they left or what time they returned, right? Because of the whole way the quantum realm works, however, that whole space magic, sci-fi magic. Nebula left a little later than Rhodey. She technically left at the same time as him because of quantum. Either way, it works. But yeah, I thought they handled that well as did a lot of fleshing out. Actually, yeah, you know, let's take a moment to talk about that. They did. This movie was probably next to Guardians 2. I think this movie, well, actually Nebula's only had 3 appearances, I suppose. Guardians 1, 2, and 3. I mean, Guardians 1 and 2, and then this movie, right? As well as, actually, so that's 4 appearances. So I think this movie did a great job of fleshing out her character a lot more, especially with her banter and her time with Tony. She clearly learned a lot about, I mean, just sacrifice, right? I mean, the fact that her and Tony were having to just ration out food and work together, and they were on the ship for dang near a month, I think. If not just multiple weeks. So that was a cool way to work that into her character. And she's still in the MCU. So she's a part of the Guardians now officially, or should I say the As Guardians of the Galaxy. So that was a great way to see that character grown. And then we go into, speaking of character depth, right, we go into Thor. This whole kind of culmination of everything that had happened to him, all the loss he had suffered, led to him going on the greatest, apparently, binge and trash eat of his life. So yeah, we got Fat Thor. He was clearly binge drinking and eating and playing Fortnite with Meeks and Korg. Also, Meeks and Korg survived the snap, so I'm about it. But yeah, as well as Noobmaster 69, screw that guy. And we got to see that Thor was definitely feeling the weight of his loss. I mean, just across all these movies, he's pretty much had to sacrifice something in each movie he was in. Not only did he have to break up with Jane, in the first movie he had to break the Bifrost and his connection to Jane and Earth. In the second movie, his mom died, and he thought he had lost Loki. In the third movie, he lost all of Asgard, and now he loses pretty much everything else, and he's just this kind of broken shell of a god. So we got to see a lot more of his humility and just, I guess, human side, so to speak. You know, because we say he's a god, but at the same time, it was a nice little character development bit for him to go back in time and talk to his mom and have to realize that he did not need to try to live up to this idea of what a king is supposed to be or a god is supposed to be. So it did a great job, and we got to see him still worthy to wield Mjolnir. So he got to dual wield Mjolnir and Stormbreaker for a bit before Cap kind of took over the reins. And yeah, I saw that one coming from a mile away, but I still squealed like a little girl when I saw it. Each time I've seen this movie, man, I've gotten freaking hyped whenever I saw Captain America wield Mjolnir. It's just awesome. Me and my friend joke that in Infinity War, Thor has the greatest area of effect or AoE attack in the MCU, and in Endgame, Cap's got the best combo of all time. Just the way he lays into Thanos with the hammer. Man, it was freaking dope. But yeah, seeing this also, the idea there is that the Russo brothers pretty much confirmed that the reason why he couldn't lift the hammer in Age of Ultron was because of his guilt over knowing the fate of Tony's parents. And that was all fleshed out in Civil War, right? Captain America 3. But because that whole truth had been revealed and all those things had been laid to rest, he was able to, with that guilt lifted, he was able to wield Mjolnir in Endgame. So that's how that all worked out, or that's what I'm going with. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But, I mean, yeah, I just thought it was a great way to also just resolve his character arc in terms of being this, I don't know, just being wholesome. Just being a wholesome Steve Rogers. That was nice. Also, flash forwarding to the fact that he stayed back in time and got to have his dance with Peggy Carter and got to live out this whole alternate timeline where he was happy and married, but was also technically simultaneously in the ice. I get that people want to, like, there's a lot of ways to take that and argue it and all that. I'm glad we got Sam Cap. I wouldn't have minded seeing Cap or Bucky as Sam because they can still work together. And I heard a lot of lashback, especially from my friends, about Sam being Bucky as opposed to Cap. But, I mean, Sam being Cap as opposed to Bucky. But I think the kind of fear there was that Bucky might just revert or might turn back into the Winter Soldier, right? So it was a better idea to have Sam be Captain America in the immediate and Bucky, like, you know, laying in support. So I think that was a good idea too. Plus, I mean, Bucky's probably like a mega wanted fugitive by now, so that might not be the best call. We do have to kind of remember the repercussions of the Sokovia Accords and the fact that Bucky is busted out of jail multiple times, so he's got to be on multiple, like, wanted lists. So I think that was just a good call from a narrative stance, regardless of what you think, or what I think, or what anyone thinks about who should have been Cap. But that also still opens up the fact that either one of them could be Captain America in the future, or Bucky could still become Captain America in the future. I know Marvel might pull that depending on how people receive Sam as Cap, or the Falcon as Captain America. We'll have to see. But I just think it's going to be cool to see how having the wing armor and the shield on screen is going to be. But I think my other thoughts there are that Bucky knew what was about to happen. Like, there seemed to be kind of some knowing glances and nods, or at least what I perceived, about the fact that, you know, he knew Sam was about to take up the shield, and he nodded about it, kind of gave that knowing glance, like I said. So I think, for the most part, Bucky either knew Steve well enough to know what was probably going to happen, or they had talked about it. I have no idea, but that's what I kind of like to believe. One thing that I thought was a little weird, right, is this concept that the snap had to be the thing, the action done that, like, fractured, that either wiped out existence or brought people back or wiped out or did whatever. I think that was more, I think the whole point of that was to more so be a conceptual thing, like, just the power of wielding the gauntlet was enough. I get what they were going for, but I feel like that was kind of arbitrary, so I can be either way on that. I just feel like that was definitely one of those things that, it just felt a little weird because you consider, really, like, they got snapped like 14 times, and then, like, we're back to half the... That's just a personal gripe. Whatever. So then we kind of go into Nebula's betrayal, and actually a lot happened towards the end of the last act, towards the end of the second, third act, what have you. Just with Nebula's betrayal, with Hulk wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, with this whole... I thought it was just this beautiful and slightly subtle way of showing that everything was all right. Not just Hawkeye's wife calling him, but seeing the birds outside. Just this imagery of the sun shining, that everything was alright. Then everything goes to heck when Thanos just barrages them. That was cool as heck. I mean, I thought Thanos coming through the portal, tearing through the event. Okay, that is another thing, actually. Why were there, like, no sirens or alarms? There should have been some kind of heads up that, you know, a giant freaking spaceship had come out and, like, had breached the Avengers facility. Like, I know it was from inside going out, but I feel like there should have been something. I just feel like that was a narrative device that could have been handled a little bit better. But either way, seeing Thanos' ship come through the portal, and that's another thing people were asking, like, how would he know how to come through the portal? Well, I mean, my thought is that he had pretty much forever back then, we don't know, to reverse engineer Pym particles and all that, so there's that. But yeah, either way, time, travel, space magic stuff. Hulk wielding the Infinity Gauntlet was really cool. I think they could have worked in the whole gamma radiation thing a little bit better, but once again, that's really arbitrary to me. I think the weight of everything Thor had been doing, like everything that had been going on, was really beautifully portrayed in how he wanted to wield the Infinity Gauntlet, because it was pretty clear that even if the thing killed him, he was ready for it. He just wanted to do something good. So that was actually one of the more emotional parts of it. It was a quick kind of moment, but I think that was definitely one of the more emotional parts of the movie for me, was, like, if even subtle, right, was realizing how kind of far Thor had fallen, so to speak. Like, that, this is where it was at. He wasn't a good king, but he was also pretty freaking broken. But it is cool to see Valkyrie take over for as the kind of king of Asgard. I wonder what that's going to look like in future movies or in miniseries. But hey, once again, Thor's going into space. I wonder if he's going to stay Fat Thor or if he's going to slim back into Hunk Thor. We're gonna have to see. Either way, I'm thinking Stormbreaker's in the ship with him. I'm thinking he took Stormbreaker, so maybe we'll see Beta Ray Bill. Only one way of knowing, which I guess would be seeing the next movie. Either way, it's kind of hard to just talk about. There were just so many things in this movie I liked. I'm still a little biased, I gotta admit, because I thought it was one of the best ways they could have ended Fate. I'm just gonna say ended this whole Avengers trilogy that they started, or quadrilogy they started. So there's just so much more I could tear into. I'm probably just gonna have to do a part 2 spoiler review after I see the new footage next week. But yeah, I guess let's just kind of discuss the final battle, right? Because there was just a lot of good imagery there. This whole battle between good and evil. The fact that even without the support of everyone else, we see Steve suiting up, ready to go. Just lone soldier. Obviously, that was also one of the greatest reveals and comebacks of all time, was seeing everyone come through the portal, seeing all these heroes emerge, and the throwback to On Your Left by Sam was also beautiful. It was also, since I'm talking about imagery, right, it was also just great imagery, Sam flying out of the portal as this kind of bird, right? Just this kind of majestic herald of what is to come, which was the rest of these soldiers. So that was a great way to portray that as well, and to just prelude to the fact that whatever came next was meant to just, this is what's here to save. This is what's here for the fate of all mankind. Was actually, I guess, all of existence, because Thanos was ready to wipe the slate clean. So, yeah, and I don't know what I expected, but the fact that they showed the whole fight was incredible. We finally got to hear Cap say, "Avengers Assemble," another thing that I called, handled perfectly. Every freaking troop, every freaking Avenger, besides Vision, and maybe a few others, but dang near every Avenger lined up beside Cap, beside or behind, and we got to see the whole battle play out. I thought there were definitely parts of the battle that I wasn't too happy about. I thought Drax could have gotten a little bit more action rather than just stabbing people with his daggers. I thought the problem with Mantis is she's kind of functionally worthless in a hand-to-hand fight. So in something of this level, so the only way what they could have had to do is, I don't know, mount one of those big bruisers and take it over and use it to fight people. I think that would have been a better way to showcase her powers and the fact that she could fight. But they didn't, and I think that was, I think they kind of missed a way to use her a little bit better. Especially if she snuck up on Ebony Maw or someone like that, and just put him to sleep. There were some ways they could have used her, but then, yeah, Gamora killed it. She was awesome on the battlefield. So was Star-Lord in the few scenes we got to see with him, but I feel like the Guardians didn't get a lot of screen time, or some of them didn't get to showcase their combatant ability as much. We got to see people like Rocket. Actually, I don't even remember seeing too much of Groot fight, which is a shame because he tore it up in the Battle of Wakanda in Infinity War. Another weird thing was just how War Machine got his armor. I wish we got to see a suit up of that. Because the armor he had in Endgame, for the final battle was incredible. It was dope as heck, but I wish we got to see a suit up or something, or maybe him summon it and then it merges onto him on the battlefield. That would have been cool. But it was still cool. It was awesome, but we also didn't get to see too much of him in the fight. So overall battle was incredible, but I thought some of the segmented portions was great, especially seeing Ant-Man and Wasp reunite. But I don't know. I can pick this apart. There were multiple chunks like that. I might have to do a further decompression at some point. I'm still just gathering my thoughts, so it looks like I'm going to have to see this 6th, 7th, and 8th time, and just kind of delve into it more once I see additional footage. But yeah, there were some. I just don't think all of these heroes were utilized. Seeing Black Panther acknowledge Clint was cool as well. So there were a lot of throwbacks throughout this movie to different character relations and just running jokes. So that was great. But another thing that kind of irked me, oh gosh, for better and worse, was I know all of the female Avengers just gathering all together. And here's the thing, right? Is it wasn't even that. The problem is that they were gathering around Captain Marvel, right? And Captain Marvel is clearly like the most powerful person they have on the battlefield, right? So if there's anyone you're going to protect or gather around, it probably should have been Spider-Man or I don't know, Groot or Mantis. I mean, case in point, Mantis is once again Mantis was the weakest physical combatant they had on the field. So I really wish that they would have used leverage that a little bit better, considering that Captain Marvel, because I mean they all dispersed and they didn't even really protect Captain Marvel per se. I mean she's pretty much an unstoppable glowing wrecking ball. So trust me when I say she didn't need any help. Which also goes into this idea of what was the plan with her charging into the quantum portal, because she didn't have any like armor on. She could have just chunked the freaking Infinity Gauntlet in there and would have been stuck in the quantum realm, but that still wouldn't have solved the problem. So I get what they were trying to accomplish, but that was still probably one of the weakest, most glaring narrative portions to me, was the fact that there was no actual game plan there. She was just going to charge into a glowing portal. And we also know that PIM particles drive people insane, so that whole thing was just, that was just handled poorly. I mean, because now it turns out that Thanos saved Captain Marvel's life. Because he destroyed the portal, it means that she didn't charge into it, she didn't disappear. So yeah, Thanos saved Captain Marvel's life. Thanos is the only reason why Captain Marvel exists in the MCU currently, and I'm gonna say it, Thanos did nothing wrong. Thanos did nothing wrong. Let's just go ahead and backpedal, because I'm clearly tearing too much into that. Captain Marvel destroying Thanos' ship, I thought was awesome, but it also does raise in the question that now we have the level of power that they've set Captain Marvel at is above Thor and Iron Man and Hulk and is above pretty much any possible configuration of the Avengers combined in terms of power level. Like, I don't think that Thor or Hulk could beat her, so there is a problem with like how high of a power level they've put her at. So they're gonna have to figure a way to work that into I don't know, just a Captain Marvel 2, or how that handles, or if they bring in Binary, or they bring in Monica Rambeau as the next Captain Marvel. I don't know what's gonna happen, but yeah, they've kind of put her at too high of a power level, so it puts her in a league of her own in terms of like you having to bring in someone like Adam Warlock or the Nova Corps or Cosmic Ghost Rider to pretty much even pose a threat to her. Or I guess Galactus or Silver Surfer. So Thanos, right? This Thanos was a lot more brutal, and I liked it. I mean, he was clearly just more of a physical combatant because he had his sword and he was ready for battle, but he also didn't have the Infinity Gauntlet, so he wasn't leaning on his power too much. So we got to see what actually made him a threat to other people. But we already had a hint of that from the beginning of Infinity War, where he decimated the Hulk. So, actually, you know what? That would have been something I enjoyed. It's not just the three amigos, Tony, Thor, and Steve fighting him, which that was also a good fight. Just seeing them all bounce off of one another and them play into each other's powers. But it also sucked because even though there were three of the original Avengers, we didn't get to see Hulk in that final fight, which would have been great. And while they say maybe the argument there was that it would have overpowered Thanos, I don't think that would be the case, because once again, we got to see Thanos not only kick the crap out of the Hulk, but with his sword, he could literally destroy Captain America's shield. So I think he had no problems taking on not just 3, but maybe even 4 Avengers. And with the Power Stone, he was able to knock the crap out of Captain Marvel too. So, I mean, the guy knew how to not only use the stones, but how to handle pretty much any threat he could think on his feet. But I was really hoping for that Hulk-Thanos rematch. That would have made it for me. Like, that would have been one of the things that was just the icing on the cake. But still seeing him get the crud knocked out of him by Steve with Mjolnir was still awesome. So, I immensely enjoyed I don't know. It sounds like I'm speaking too negatively about that, but I really enjoyed the fight. I really enjoyed the whole battle. I thought it was incredibly well handled. I already said that before, but I just kind of want to reiterate that because the movie, I thought it was just great. I thought that the fight in particular delivered on the hype, but while I definitely think that they could have handled it better in some regards, I don't know if that would have made the overall fight better, like the overall final battle better, because it might have weakened certain other elements of it. But the kind of climax of the fight and the end of it, where we finally see Tony Stark not just gain the upper hand on Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet, but use it and die because of using it was, I mean, the fact that he wiped out Thanos and was the guy who not only started the MCU but ended its greatest battle was a great way to send him off. I mean, I wish he didn't die, but I think that it was right. You know, I think that that was the best way they could have sent him off, and that was the cleanest way to take Robert Downey Jr. out of the MCU. But I definitely think they're still going to include him in flashbacks. There's already been hints, so to speak, that he's probably still going to be in the MCU in some capacity. So I wouldn't say he's gone, but I'd say while Tony Stark is not physically in the MCU, I'd say he's definitely still in it in some capacity. So, you know, we've still got our main Avenger. We've still got the first Avenger in the MCU somehow. Not just talking about Captain America, obviously, but I think he's still going to be there in some capacity, like I've said. I thought his send-off was good. The fact that they had a funeral in there. I do wish they had a funeral for Black Widow as well, but, you know, I think that was more of a... I'll just say that I think they could have had a funeral for Black Widow as well. Maybe we'll see that, but kind of their brief amount of grieving, I think, was still a good send-off for her, just because they were definitely reflecting on it and acknowledging her sacrifice. So maybe we'll see how that turns out, too. But yeah, I could go on and on. I think the movie overall just delivered on everything that they set out to do with the MCU. I think it was incredibly ambitious, not just to have Infinity War and to have the snap happen, but to have to follow up with it and have a huge battle, a confrontation with Thanos and all of his forces, as well as to figure out a way for the Avengers to have to fight him. I thought including time travel as well as the quantum realm as a means to that time travel was a great inclusion, even though pretty much everyone saw it coming, including kind of the... ones that I called out, but then sending Thor into space, the Hulk, wherever the Hulk is, and giving Tony and Steve some, you know, some happy finality and closure and resolutions to their character arcs. I think this movie did everything right, for the most part. I've clearly shared my grievances, but I'm going to say at like a top level, I think that this movie did as much right as it could have done in terms of closure and delivering on all of the hype and all of the things that it just built up and set out to do. But, like, you know, those are just my thoughts. Like, clearly I love the movie. I've talked to some of y'all. I know that it's been kind of divisive among some people where they've either loved or hated it. I've actually talked to very few people who've just thought it's been lukewarm. But I like talking to y'all about it. I like talking with people about it. But the consensus seems to be that more people definitely like the movie, even if they thought it was a step below Infinity War. But all that to say, guys... those are my thoughts, but that's all I have for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of King's Comics. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you want to talk more about my thoughts, then please drop a line down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you like today's video, I can't believe I'm going to say this, smash that like button. Just hit the freaking like button if you like the video. I'd love that. Thank you guys so much. And if you want to hear about when new videos drop, or you really like today's video, please hit the subscribe button or the notification button so you can get that ding whenever I drop a new video. And that's really all I have today, folks. Like I said, thank you so much for bearing with me and sticking through it. And this has been another episode of King's Comics. Hey, Dad. I'm doing great. I'm just recording. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, that's my life. Yep, thanks. Yep. All right. Yeah, we'll do. And I still owe you a steak dinner. All right. All right. Love you too, Dad. Bye. That was my dad.